What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Monster Bass channel. You got Paul here with Burly Fishing, and I've got a fun one for you. We are gonna get nerdy with a square bill. We're gonna get really specific. Specifically, we are gonna be talking about fishing a square bill crankbait in the river or stream, but really the river. I know it sounds minute, but I'm so excited. I got some really good tips and information to share with you today. But before we get to the tips, the information, the nerdiness, I just want to say thank you so much for stopping by the channel. Thank you for hitting the subscribe button, smashing the like button, and ringing the notification bell. We love it when you do that stuff. Show some love to the channel and to the team, the Monster Bass team. We love to see it. And when you do all that stuff, you can see when we post the next video, and you can get tips, tricks, fun fishing videos, and all that sort of stuff coming right your way here on the YouTube. So thank you for doing that. Now, so I've got 4 things I want to cover in this video specifically. I want to start with when. When do you throw a square bill in the river? Well, I'm here to tell you, it's like right now. Now is the juiciest time to be throwing a square bill in the river. The water right now, granted I'm in Michigan, it's different all over the country, but we're talking pre-spawn or like just before pre-spawn. So in Michigan, we're still even a little bit ahead of pre-spawn. Water is like 45 to 48, 49 degrees. We're like inching up to 50, but we're not quite at 50. I think 50 to 55, 49 to 55 is probably that sweet spot where a square bill is really gonna be the ticket. So why do I wanna fish pre-spawn? Why is the square bill good in pre-spawn? Let me tell you. So in pre-spawn, fish are actually just feeding up. They're trying to eat as many calories as possible, store as much energy as possible to prepare for the rigors of the spawn. So this happens in that 55-ish degree type water. And so why is a square bill so great? Well, a square bill is representing like a minnow or a shad or a baby bluegill, some kind of a smaller fish forage. And that is a high calorie quality meal. And that's what that fish is looking for at that time. So that's what they're looking for. But also, it's just fun to throw a square bill. You huck it out, you retrieve it with a steady retrieve on the way back, or you can mix it up, whatever. You just cast it out, you retrieve it back, and you cover a ton of water really efficiently, really quickly, catch a bunch of fish, and the fish that you catch, because remember, they're eating all those calories. They're trying to get as big as possible. They're in bulking season. You're catching bulking season fish. So that means you're gonna have an opportunity to catch potentially the biggest fish of the whole year has a good chance to be found in the early spring, right now. So that's what makes a square bill such a great bait for this time of year. Now this leads into the where. So where are these fish gonna be? Why does a square bill fit? Well, because these fish are they're gonna find those staging areas, right? They're gonna be looking around and preparing, well, not staging areas, they're gonna be looking for the spawning areas. Fish are gonna be looking for spawning areas at this time of the year. They're not gonna be there yet, and they're not gonna be parked on beds yet, but what they are gonna be doing is they're gonna say, okay, where is that slack water, that really still water that's maybe got a little bit of a softer bottom, that is essentially going to be undisturbed. They want undisturbed water. So those spots are really easy to find. Like as you're going down a river system, it's pretty easy to point and be like, hey, look, that's, wind protected, and maybe it's a little back pocket. I can just see the depth. It's only a couple feet deep. That's going to be a great area for that fish to spawn in like a couple of weeks. But right now, they're going to be just off those areas. So they're going to be really close by. Now, the best place to look to fish a square bill in that area is going to be if you have a drop off, like a pretty quick drop off where the water actually gets really deep nearby one of those slack water spawning areas. Why is that? At this time of year, you're seeing you'll get like a warming trend, and then you get a cold front, and then a warming trend and a cold front. So the weather is like is pretty sporadic, and it's changing pretty frequently. Those fish are going to want to adjust accordingly. So when the cold front comes in, they're going to make a move. When the weather starts to warm up, they're going to come back up shallow. They're going to be making those moves according to the weather, and so they want to be in a place that's close to the spawning area because they're starting to search them out, and they're starting to push shallow, but they need to be able to go deep when they need to. It's a great place to also throw a crankbait because a square bill crankbait is going to dive in that 4 to 6 foot range, and that's smack dab in the middle of where you're going to find those fish. Now, let's get to the how. So I get to my spot, I've got the when, the water temp's in that 50-55 degrees. I know there's no fish on beds, so I know the when is right. I get to the where, I find my spawning area, I'm looking around, I'm seeing maybe some drop off, some cold water. I'm feeling really good about it. Now, what do I do now? What's the how? How do I make this square bill work for me? So the first thing I'm gonna do when I get to my spot, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna start looking around for pieces of cover. I mentioned you wanna see rocks and stumps, maybe some logs. I wanna see some of those things. And the river shouldn't be too hard to find. Yes, you can use electronics, but you should be able to, this shouldn't be super deep water. You should be able to at least see a couple of things that, that look juicy. Now, if I'm seeing a stump, if I'm seeing a log, if I'm seeing, any kind of debris in the water, that's one thing I want to target for sure. Rocks are critical. Why is that important? That's important because square bills are built to run into stuff. This square bill, I know it looks, you're seeing these two giant hooks hanging underneath and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna get hung up on everything. Not necessarily. When a square bill is running through current, I'm just running through any water, it's gonna tail up, nose down. These hooks, because this bait is moving, are gonna be trailing behind it. And you can see right here, this square bill, right? That's why it's called a square bill. It's square bills because that's the shape of the bill, is actually gonna be wiggling around, but it's actually gonna be pushing stuff out of the way. So with the hooks running behind it, that square bill in the way, blocking, you're not gonna get hung up nearly as much as you think. So the way it's designed, its intended purpose is, one of its intended purposes, it's supposed to imitate either a bait fish or a craw pattern, right? And what is that? That is a juicy, healthy meal for a fish that wants to feed up. And what you're gonna wanna try and do is create a reaction strike. So let's say I see a log and I'm like, okay, I'm in the right spot. I got the where, I see my log. I'm gonna cast past that log because my thought is, okay, I've got a fish that's maybe using that log as some cover to deflect some current. It finds a nice place where it wants to hang out and it's looking to ambush. So what you do is you cast past that log and then you try and hit that log. If you can hit that log, not only, if you don't hit the log, fine, it's totally okay. You still have a good shot at catching a fish, but if you hit the log, you have a good chance at creating a reaction strike. That fish is there waiting to pounce on bait or on fish that looks just like your bait, and when it hits that log, it's boom, you got its attention, and now it's just gonna react, and it's just gonna go eat that bait, because that's what it's trying to do right now. Again, they're trying to bulk up, they're trying to save energy, pack on pounds for the spawn. That's what they're conditioned to do, and you're hoping to trick them into doing that as quickly as possible. A great way to do that is bumping into rocks, bumping into stumps and sticks, and running it right over like low-hanging grasses. If you can find some grass, I want to have to rip through some of that grass. That's how close I want to get to that grass. That's a great way to create a reaction strike and catch one of those fish that's looking to feed up. Now, another kind of how that can really help you out, when you get a crankbait rod, a lot of times you're gonna see these be like 7.4, 7.10, like you're gonna see these longer rods that are meant to just bomb cast. So you wanna, in open water, that's absolutely what you wanna do, especially for a deeper cranking rod. You want a little bit longer rod with like a more moderate action, not a super fast, stiff, aggressive tip. Something a little softer. Now, I agree with the softer standpoint. I still want a more moderate, softer rod tip, than like a jig rod or something like that. And why is that? Well, you've got treble hooks on these baits. Whenever I'm dealing with a treble hook bait, there's a lot more space for a fish. There's a lot more opportunity for a fish to get some leverage and potentially shake the hook. So how do you combat that? Well, with a softer tip rod, it acts as a dampener. So as that fish is, pulling and doing a head shake, the rod's moving with that fish and it's not giving it nearly as much leverage to spit a hook. So that's one thing. Now, so soft, yes, but now when it comes to length in the river, I actually want a shorter rod. I want like a 6'10", 7 foot, somewhere in there. I want a shorter rod. Why is that? Why would I ever want a shorter rod? I don't need, in a river, in most rivers, I mean, yes, the Mississippi, sure, but in most river systems and creeks and streams, I do not need to bomb a cast. I don't need a long cast. I need a shorter, more accurate cast. Because what am I going to be doing? I'm going to be looking for a rock pile. I'm going to be looking for a little back eddy pocket. And I'm just going to want to get a quick roll cast. I don't want my rod anywhere behind me, just out to the side, quick roll cast, and I want to zip a line, I want to zip my bait right in there. I don't want a big splash, so I'm not going to be going way high, huge arc in the air, nothing like that. I want to get the bait to where its intended target is, quickly, efficiently, and most importantly, I need it to be accurate. Now, another tip, if you find yourself getting hung up a whole bunch, but you're in a juicy spot with a bunch of fish, one thing you can do to help yourself out is downsize your hooks. This is a Strike King KVD 1.5. It comes with those upsize hooks. That's something that KVD preaches about, and obviously if he's saying to do it, it's a great idea. I'm not saying downsize all of your hooks, but I am saying if you're getting hung up, think about downsizing the specific hook that's getting more hung up, or both of them, right? You don't want to imbalance your bait, but sincerely, if you find you're like getting the back, you know, treble hung up every single time, just go down a size, right? So, you know, go from a 4 to a 6, right? Go from a 6 to an 8, depending on the size of your bait. You know, it's more important to be in the strike zone than it is to have a big hook. That's my personal opinion. You're not going to get hit if you're not in the strike zone. So if you're not getting down deep enough, downsize both of your hooks and maybe help your bait get down there, you know, a little bit easier. Go to a fluoro leader. Maybe that'll help you out get a little bit deeper if you need to get deeper. And if you're getting hung up, again, consider changing out your treble for a smaller treble. All right, so that's the how. Bump the stumps, bump the rocks, shorter rod, accurate casts, and if you need to modify your square bill with something like a clip, a fluoro leader, or maybe even downsizing a treble hook, or upsizing. If you're losing fish, just upsize, right? You can do some stuff like that. So that's the how. Let's talk about the what. So let's get down to the baits themselves. When it comes to color, I do think color is important, really in the river especially. My go-tos are like a reddish brown craw pattern. That's probably where I'm going to start most often. I would also recommend definitely go for a minnow or a shad presentation, like something more natural, just like silvers and white, things like that. So here's a good example. This is the Kingfisher Lures square bill, phenomenal square bill, but just something in white or silver, black and silver, something like that. Not a ton of detail, but this is going to absolutely get bit for you. You can also go bluegill, right? If you have bluegill and you know in your river systems, any bluegill pattern will work just fine. Just something that's natural, not super flashy, just natural. Then the other option, again, I'll show you that KVD 1.5. This is in a craw pattern. You can't go wrong with a craw pattern in the river. I most often want to start here, to be honest with you. This is just where I like to start. Can't go wrong with a craw pattern. So reds, blacks, oranges, even some yellows, but really that like muddy brown and red, that's a great place to start. Now, if neither of those are working, or I'm seeing some really stained water, right? Maybe you had some rain, you get a little runoff, or you're dealing with like a mucky bottom river with a lot of silt in it, and you're getting some stained water. My go-to for that is chartreuse and black in the river. And this is the BX Brat from Rapala. It's one of my favorite square bills. Honestly, this is one of my go-tos. I'll show you my craw. Hold on a second, where are you? So this is my BX Brat and craw. I've got a bunch of these, but you can see I run it into everything. It's a little bit scratched up. It's a little dented. It's definitely seen better days, but it's also seen a whole heck ton of fish. Now, one thing I do like about this BX Brat, and I love that they did this on the craw, but not on the chartreuse and black. This is a matte finish. So it's probably hard for you guys to tell, but that's a matte finish. There's no clear coat on there. It's really plain Jane. I love that on my craws. That's one thing I prefer. And then when I'm going a little brighter and I'm going the chartreuse, you can tell this one has a reflective clear coat. So it's reflecting a whole bunch more light. And I think that's like a small detail that I think is really cool to see. So that's maybe something to look for on your craws. I do like to see something in a matte or even my naturals sometimes. And then when you get that stained water and you reach for something bright, like an orange or a bright orange or a chartreuse or whatever, maybe look for something that's got maybe some, you know, reflective eyes or like a nice shiny clear coat on it. Now, when it comes to what color is definitely very important, but another thing that I think might even be more important is silent versus, you know, something that makes some sound, right? Something that's got a rattle to it or a knock in it. Why would you grab, I start with silent and then I work my way to some more noise. Now, why is that? Why do I do that? We talked about generating a reaction strike, right? If I'm generating a reaction strike, I'm gonna sneak up on where I think that fish is, right? So if I see my log, our imaginary log that we were talking about, if I see that log, I'm gonna creep up on it as much as possible, because I don't want the fish to know that I'm obviously there, but I want to surprise that fish because I want to create, again, a reaction strike. It's the best chance of getting bit. I'm going to cast past it so that it can't see the bait coming towards me, and then I want to bump that log and startle it and create that reaction bite. How the heck am I going to do that if things rattling all the way there? The whole point of the rattle is to let the fish know and give it to something that's like, hey, I'm here, and give it something to key in on. It's not going to work. So a silent square bill is where I start when I fish the river, and then I switch over to something that's got a rattle, unless it's super stained or dark water. If it's been raining or whatever and it's muddy, I'm immediately going for a rattle. You gotta give them something to key in on, absolutely. But when I have my choice, I'm starting with something like this. This is the Alex Rudd hammerhead silent square bill. Now, if you guys don't know, this bait did come in the March Texas box. It's heckin' cool. There's a bunch of different color patterns. This one is the perp. I wonder why. So you can see this one's really natural. White side body, chartreuse on bottom, purple on top. A pretty popular alternative to like your standard natural presentation. Works pretty good in dirty water and works pretty good in really clear water. So a great option, but there's a ton of different ones. He's got a really cool craw that's like gold, black, and red that I really like. But this is the silent square bill. So this is what I'm gonna gravitate towards first. I'm probably telling you right now, 75% of my square bills are probably silent, or at least quieter. I don't have a whole lot of like one knock loud ones. So this is what this one sounds like when you rattle it. There's almost no sound to it. There's the one weight in there and it's barely moving. You're not getting a lot of sound. This KVD, the one that I've been showing you, the 1.5, totally silent. Doesn't make a single sound at all. Now the BX Brat, one of my favorites, like I told you, also completely silent. Not making a single sound, making like barely the littlest hint of a rattle, just like that Alex Rudd, super quiet. And then I do have, like this is the Kingfisher one that I showed you guys in like a natural. This one has pretty nice rattle to it. It's not a deep thump, it's more of a rattle. So you gotta have both. I do recommend carrying both. You're gonna want something that has noise for those, those muddy days, or when the fish just need a kick in the pants, right? But I am gonna start silent, and again, it's because I want to surprise that fish. I want to create that reaction strike. That's my goal. All right, so we started off. We covered the when. When am I gonna be fishing a square bill? 50 to 55 degree water. I want to be pre-spawn. I don't want to see any fish on beds. For the square bill to be really effective, you want to find those fish that are feeding up, chasing bait. So that's the when. Then we're going to talk about the where. Again, I'm going to try and first of all find in the river. I'm going to look for some slack water, backwater pockets, more shallow water, silty bottom, something that's wind protected, that's going to be a good spawning area in a couple of weeks. And then I'm looking adjacent to that, right next to that. And I'm looking for something preferably it's got a big drop off nearby, so those fish can do what they need to do as the weather patterns change. And then ideally, once I get there, now I'm trying to bump stumps, bump rocks, try and find that cover, get as close as possible. If there's a big thicket down there, I want to get it right up next to it, and I want to stay as close as I can to it for as long as possible. And what am I going to be using for gear? I'm going to be using a shorter rod, 6, 10, 7 foot, something like that. Anything that I know I can be really accurate with. Don't need a long bomb. I need short, accurate casts. And I'm looking for something with a softer tip. Moderate action if I can find it. Again, keep that fish pinned. Don't give it any opportunity to create leverage, especially in the river with the current. If you get a smallmouth in the current, you're going to wish you had a softer rod, because any leverage that they get, they're going to use their advantage, try and spit that hook right back in your face. Softer, more moderate rod. Also, I think in bait casters, you can tighten them up a little. If you've got it super loose because you're flipping or whatever, go ahead and tighten those bait casters up. That's gonna help you out a little bit too. And then finally, what bait should I grab? Again, my kind of go-tos, my staples, just anything basic. Silvers, whites, blacks, black and whites, black and silvers, anything like bluegill colored. So you get your greens and reds, a little bit of orange in there sometimes, but just anything that's gonna mimic a bluegill. And then if that doesn't work, or the water's really stained, I'm going to that like chartreuse and black. That's kind of one of my favorites, but anything that's got like a bright color to it, or something that is like black and gold. If the water is really dark, you may need a silhouette. So like an all black bait might be the ticket. But again, in most instances, I'm just going for the regular. Now, the last thing you want to think about is, do I go silent, or do I go something with a little bit of rattle, or do I go something with a big thud? I'm always going to start silent. I recommend you doing that, but just do that calculus as you're trying to pick your baits. That's the idea. All right, so those are my sort of advanced fishing a square bill in the river tactics, tips, tricks, whatever you want to call it. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope this was, at least you picked up one little tip or trick. If you like fishing rivers, again, I really hope you picked up something you like. I know for me, I have like a flashbulb memory of last season. I had a tough, really early cold water season, and the first fish I caught was on a finesse silent square bill, casted right up into the thickets. It was just about to start raining, and that fish came out from under that thicket and absolutely hammered it, and it was a heckin' awesome fish, and that really set the tone of my season. I hope that all of you guys are able to take some of this, some piece of information, and I hope it helps you land that giant river fish. And if it doesn't, I hope at a minimum, it makes you want to go out and fish in the river, because fishing in the river is heckin' fun this time of year. So with that, thank you so much for checking out the video. Again, I hope you hit the subscribe button. I hope you smash the like button, and I hope you rang the notification bell so that you can see when we post the next video. And I hope that you are going out to the river to catch yourself a big old fish. Enjoy it.